evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. We begin the show with news that Bersih 2.0 chairman Thomas Phan has been called in by police for questioning tomorrow. This over a Facebook post made in January. Now, Thomas is being investigated under the Peaceful Assembly Act for urging those unhappy with the so-called Sheraton move to protest. And now I know many see this as yet another instance of police intimidation of activists and journalists, and also perhaps a backslide on democratic rights.
Well, listen, of course, you know, the police often just follow up. They're doing their job in terms of getting information. The question is whether there's a real move to now charge Thomas Phan from Bersih on this. There is always concern, Melisa, about our democratic status because, of course, we for decades lived under an authoritarian government, very, very thin-skinned when it came to any kind of criticism, and often attacking those in civil society and wanting to silence them. Because we had that little break with Pakatan Harappan, and it's very unclear that this administration's attitude towards dissent, towards democratic expression,
yes,
all that I think is now up in the air.
But well, if we were just to take a look at the recent examples of people brought in for police questioning, I mean, there's so many in just the past few weeks. YB Hanayo brought in for questioning the progress of plans on to end child marriage. Patrick Teo was charged for allegedly insulting the Tengku Mahkota of Johor. We had that case against Malaysia Kini brought to the courts over readers' comments. I could go on. Bu Su Lin for her series of articles about the Johor hospital fires. Tashni Sukumaran as well for reporting on a raid for undocumented migrants. But all this, Sharaad, one of this, I want to point out that it's not just activists and journalists, ordinary citizens too. This piece of news caught my attention over the weekend. A retiree was fined 2,000 ringgit for a Facebook post for insulting remarks against the Health Minister, Datuk Sri Dr. Adam Baba. And in this case, it was his first offence. He was unrepresented, the retiree was unrepresented, and the judge even said that the criticism posted was not overboard and malicious in nature. So why was he still fined?
A very interesting question. Perhaps none of us really can kind of get into the mind of the judge.
Perhaps.
But, but Melisa, there is an issue of, kind of comparisons, right? I mean, you do have a list there, and it's a compelling list. I think a lot of us are perhaps worried, us in the media, of course, wanting to do our jobs and wanting to be unmolested in the practice of our profession. But there's also this larger context of the world, and when you look at many countries where, when we talk about attack on civil society and on dissent, we're looking at hundreds of arrests. We're talking about the shutting down of media organizations across the countries like Turkey and all, have a terrible reputation in terms of democratic rights. But Malaysia, I mean, we're still at that point, perhaps we're at an inflection point, Melisa, right. We're at that point where if we don't stand up or if the lines are not drawn very clearly, we might see a real, spiral down towards the authoritarian path that we had for many decades. The
other rhetorical question I have is whether or not we will give in to perhaps a culture of fear and silence. Let's take a look at other news. Pakatan Harappan has announced that it will not call for the dissolution of state governments under its administration, even if an early general election is called. Now, this statement came following a Presidential Council meeting, and the statement was signed by PKR President Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, Amanah President Muhammad Sabu, and DAP Sekjen Lim Guan Eng. So, Pakatan Harappan and its allies currently hold, I believe, 3 state governments in the peninsula. That's Selangor, Penang, and Negeri Sembilan, as well as the territory of Sabah. This is particularly interesting, Sharaad, because I think this goes, if I'm not mistaken, against convention, right? Almost always state governments the dissolution of state governments are called with the general elections.
Yeah, that's true. And because that was true for the Barisan Nasional period when they held both federal government and state. And then, of course, when many states fell to Pakatan Harapan, there was, in fact, I don't believe any instance where those states in opposition didn't, in fact, go to the polls at the same time. Sarawak, of course, has been different in that it's held its state election at a different cycle from the national electoral cycle. But maybe this time we'll see Sarawak more aligned to the national cycle if that benefits the state government. But also in this instance, because the elections are going to be called prematurely as far as these political actors are concerned, they had decided not to. What could be very interesting, Melissa, is the possibility of other states are held by Perikatan Nasional, especially those that governments created through defections. Would they too decide to hold back because their positions might be fragile? Very interesting questions. Malaysia now changing dramatically in its kind of political culture, the behavior. So we don't actually know how it all pan out. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
That's right. And, you know, we don't know of allegiances. We'll also have to wait and see. There seems to be some growing disquiet and dissent within UMNO leadership about the naming of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as Prime Minister, despite a joint statement from Perikatan Nasional plus leaders to support the current PM. Now, there's said to be 5-party Supreme Council members, according to news reports, who opposed Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin's candidacy. And just to note a few, Dato' Puat Zarkashi has accused Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin of piggybacking on UMNO to secure prime ministership. He to quote him, "We are selling UMNO to Bersatu just to be ministers or deputy ministers," end quote.
Yeah, Melissa, I mean, I think that the reasons given by these individuals are quite interesting. I mean, they're high-ranking individuals within
Supreme
UMNO.
Council members.
You know, they have to do with stability, that if the anchor person of the next government, I mean, presuming that Barisan Nasional and Perikatan Nasional, however that particular formation is structured, wins, if it's based on the Prime Minister is from the smallest party, would that cause instability? So there's that. I think Shah Samad has come out to say something very interesting. He says that this is the question of the prime ministership is actually premature, that what needs to be determined now is the relationship between Barisan Nasional, Muafakat Nasional, and then Perikatan Nasional, all of which are kind of overlapping but not exactly coherent at this point in time as a force going into the next election.
Well, I don't think we should discount. So I know that some UMNO leaders believe that UMNO and PAS could win the next general election without having to make concessions to Bersatu, which they claim a much smaller party. However, we cannot discount the personal popularity of Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin as Prime Minister at the moment, especially good at the moment, given his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll have to wait and see this. All this, according to pundits, we will rely on their commentary for us to dissect the situation as it unfolds. But we're going to take a quick break here on Consider This. In just a few minutes, we'll speak to some of the people behind Parlimen Digital for a roundup of the weekend's proceedings. Stay tuned to Consider This.
Di Kazakhstan, pesawat berkenaan dilaporkan tergelincir 2 kali.
Notifikasi berita terkini dan navigasi mudah. Podcast dikemas kini dengan berita dan program.
Rebirth, Reformasi, Resistance and Hope.
Serta video tanpa had dengan scroll tanpa henti. Buat turun aplikasi baru Astro AWANI sekarang. Kini berwajah baru.
Ini pula susulan
Paparan terkini, kupasan mendalam. Kami temani anda di waktu pagi untuk hari yang lebih ceria dan produktif. Gigi Ahmad, Hafizi Azaman, Hakim Rahman, Hafizi Rosli dan Naila Huda. Semuanya di AWANI Pagi. Bayangkan pagi anda dengan pandangan dan perbincangan luar kota. Berita dan isu semasa yang wajib anda ketahui sebelum anda keluar rumah. Paparan terkini, kupasan mendalam. Kami temani anda di waktu pagi untuk hari yang lebih ceria dan produktif. Gigi Ahmad, Hafizi Azaman, Hakim Rahman, Hafizi Rosli dan Naila Huda. Semuanya di AWANI Pagi.
On Astro AWANI.
I'm sure we've all seen the dashcam video of the toddler surviving a high-speed crash.
Catch the latest news of the day.
Constantly under a lot of pressure, especially now with the COVID-19 outbreak.
developments of
Hi, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. Now, the organisers and participants of last weekend's Parlimen Digital have been praised, not just for their well-researched speeches and confident delivery, but also for proving that holding a parliamentary sitting online can be done. However, it was then reported that a number of representatives from Parlimen Digital had been contacted by the police following the end of their virtual sitting on Saturday. Joining us on the line now to tell us a little bit more about this, we have Qyira Yusri, co-founder at Undi 18 and one of the organisers of the recent Parlimen Digital. Qyira, thank you so much for joining us tonight and congratulations to the team.
Thank you for having me.
Can I get you to clarify very quickly, Qyira, how many people were contacted, who contacted them and what was asked of them actually?
Yeah, so I think without going into too much detail that will reveal the participants' privacy, we know as of today about 6 or 7 participants who were contacted all over Malaysia, spread across different states. Some of the questions were revolving, most of the questions revolved around asking them about their personal information and also what is Parlimen Digital all about. Yeah, but however, none of the cops so far has reached out to any of the organizers.
Qyira, when talking to the individual participants who have been contacted by police, were they afraid? Did they feel intimidated, or are we projecting onto them this accusation that the police were intimidating these participants?
Yeah, I think that is a very valid question. I think what happened was when the police called them, they quickly messaged us as the organizers to find out what they should do. We have to bear in mind that many of them, this is their first ever, foray into politics, first ever being so public, and first time ever having their faces on so many thousands of screens over the weekend. So when they contacted us and told us of this information, we provided legal advice on how they should respond to the police officers. Some of them were quite relaxed about it, so it wasn't much of an issue, but it definitely scared quite a number of them, especially the younger university students and teenagers. And that is why we're very careful about revealing their identity.
All right. Well, the organisers of Parlimen Digital had released a statement regarding this. And part of that statement, actually the end of the statement, ended with, if I could quote it, "In the future, we hope to engage the police earlier to ease them of any concerns they may have," end quote. I'm wondering why that was included in there. Why was there a need to involve the police in this matter?
I think because for us, it's sort of an open invite. We're trying to show that Parlimen Digital does not take a side. We are literally a independent youth platform, and everyone, even young police officers, young teachers, young military officers, if you're interested to have a platform to speak out, Parlimen Digital is that platform. And I think we just want to make it very transparent about where we stand and who we are as organizers. And I think it's a way for us to, it's a gesture that we want to just open up to anyone, especially I think that's trying to question the motives of Parlimen Digital. Right. Yeah.
Qyira, but do you think that if in the future there are in fact forums that are that lean one way or the other politically, that this is a police matter? I mean, on principle, should any discussion by individuals in civil society or coming together be a subject for police investigation?
I think, so from what I understand, and I'm very new in this world still, is that, the moment you become very public, and the moment you share your opinions out in the public, it's very normal for the police to reach out to you and question you. But I think as a young activist and as a young advocate, I don't think this is something normal. I don't think it's something I want to consider normal, especially when I want to encourage more young people, especially people from vulnerable or marginalized communities, to come forward with their opinions and their ideas. Because these may be very different and unconventional ideas, and I don't think that we should scare them off with, when the authorities just, come off as, when the authorities want to question them about it. So I think, yeah.
Well, I'm really hopeful that this won't have a chilling effect on not just the participants, but also its audience, because you had, so many people tune in to watch the proceedings. Can you tell us a little bit about the final numbers for this two-day event?
Sure. If I'm not mistaken, we had almost people impressions on social media on the live views alone. So combining, streaming on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, we have reached a combination of 400,000 people reached on social media. I think this really shows that, young people do care about politics and they're looking for a platform to speak about it.
Were you expecting that 400,000?
I was very surprised because it's Saturday and Sunday morning. I had no idea so many Malaysians would wake up to watch young people talk, when you could be having brunch or something. But I think it shows that, beyond the really wholesome support that our participants have received, it shows that, debates like this, discussions like this, where it's non-partisan, it's not apolitical, it is political, right? Because we're discussing policies and ideas, but it is non-partisan and it is so representative of the communities they represent, because that's what we prioritize when we recruited these participants, right? Who are you representing? And I think that kind of insight is just a breath of fresh air for many Malaysians.
Yeah, Qyira, of course, we on this show would love to have those numbers too. I think it'll make our bosses very happy. I do want to ask you about this. I get it's a sense of projection that people have on the young. It's a positive one, that they're somehow untainted, they have no egos, they're only interested in the issues, they're not self-interested, they're unlikely to be corrupt. Is that a burden? Is it a burden for the youth? Because it's almost like we don't expect them to be human or Malaysian.
I like that you pointed out because I think even as a young activist, I get that a lot. Like, okay, the world is yours to change, and I'm just like, you're in this world too, so it's your responsibility too. But I think where these participants come from, I don't think they see it as a burden. I think they see it as an opportunity to bring forward their voices and to represent their community in ways that perhaps some of the politicians have not done before. I think that's the really fresh insight that Parlimen Digital has brought forward. And I was really amazed, to be honest, to see the level of passion that these participants bring, where we have young participants doing their own surveys and research just so that she can prepare her speech and make sure that it's rock solid with evidence. I think that's pretty impressive.
Well, okay, so Parlimen Digital has widely been hailed as a success, Qyira, but were there criticisms that perhaps the organizers discovered midway through or at the end that perhaps you feel needs to be addressed?
Yeah, I think there were a few criticisms that were called out. This is honestly the first time ever, if I believe we are the first ever youth-led non-partisan digital parliament to be done online, and I think there's of course going to be hiccups. So one of it is that the interface may not be the best. We've had some comments about the cursors being seen on screen and things like that, and we tried to fix it on the second day. I swear we tried really hard to make it look very smooth, but we also had certain parts where it was lagging and things like that. And I think ironically that shows the need for internet in many of our locations that our participants come from. I think another strong criticism that I recognize and I take is that these MPs, so to say, are not elected, right? They didn't go through election campaign, and it was all selected by the team. I think, however, when it comes to designing programs, beyond just showing that Parliament is possible, we are also trying to empower a more holistic, representative Malaysia. So I think having that selection process is extremely important, so it doesn't just become a popularity contest when it comes to programs like this, because we want to genuinely empower them.
I have to say, Qyira, the cursor did not bother me at all, but I'm just wondering very quickly now, what's next for Parlimen Digital? It's over for the past 2 days, but what's next?
Yeah, so we don't want to just make this a one-off program. That's never my intention. I think we are closely working with UNICEF, especially in supporting capacity building programs and training programs for these participants to build up more skills in terms of how to getting inside policymaker, advocacy and things like that, because we don't want our programs to just be a one-off initiative. We hope to, share our ideas and share the lessons that we've learned within this week as well. We're producing a document and report and also a handcert for everyone to look through and check it out in case they miss the event. So I think we hope to use this platform that we have and reach out to more young people to show them that you are able to have your opinions shared in the public space without having sort of like, partisan politics influencing you.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. Qyira, we're going to take a quick break, but after this, we'll continue our discussion about Parlimen Digital with one of the speakers of the House. Stay tuned to Consider This.
I'm sure we've all seen the dashcam video of the toddler surviving a high-speed crash.
Catch the latest news of the day,
Constantly under a lot of pressure, especially now with the COVID-19 outbreak.
developments on pressing issues, and the inside scoop on hot topics from Malaysia and around the world. Weeknights at 9:45 p.m. Stay informed with Kini News only on Astro AWANI.
Kini berwajah baru.
Ini pula susulan khas pesawat Back Air di Kazakhstan. Pesawat berkenaan dilaporkan tergelincir 2 kali.
Notifikasi berita terkini dan navigasi mudah. Podcast dikemas kini dengan berita dan program.
Rebirth, Reformasi, Resistance and Hope.
Serta video tanpa had dengan scroll tanpa henti. Buat turun aplikasi baru Astro AWANI sekarang. Kini berwajah baru.
Ketika ini dengan kesan penuh dan
Thank you so much for staying with Sharaad and I on Consider This. Let's continue our conversation about last weekend's Parlimen Digital. Joining us on the line now, we have Ayman Hazwani, one of the 2 people who played the role of Speaker of the Assembly during Parlimen Digital. Ayman, thank you so much for joining us. I want to congratulate you and the team, not just Undi 18, but also Challenger, Liga Rakyat Demokratik and UNAM, for hosting this online event. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about your experience being involved in Parlimen Digital. What have you learned about the role of the Speaker of the House based on your experiences this weekend?
Thank you, Melisa and Sharaad. If anything, credit due completely to the organisers. It wouldn't have been possible without them. It was my first time being the Speaker Dewan, so I had much to learn. I was very fortunate to actually sit with Tan Sri Muhammad Arif himself, so he advised us on the potential pitfalls of moving the proceedings online, and especially when things can get chaotic during the Q&A session. I was also fortunate to get the full support from the organising committee as well as my fellow YDP, Lim Wei Jet, the YDP for the first day. So what I learned is that we have to differentiate between being a YDP and being an MC. So it's not just about calling the speakers one by one. It seems like it's the only thing that I was tasked to do, but actually it's about upholding the integrity of the hall itself. So virtualizing it means that I have the extra role of making sure that no interruptions occur. So poor internet connectivity, static noises, or other MPs trying to take over the flow of the proceedings. So there were doubts on the feasibility of having the Parliament online, but seeing the level of attention that the proceedings were getting and the quality of the debate despite the time limit, it shows that it could be done. And it's a win for the Belia for being able to lead the way towards digitalization.
I'm very interested in the quality of the debate because that's something that, many people have talked about in terms of our real parliament, the lack of quality or sometimes the shouting or the partisan nature and tone of the proceedings. Parlimen Digital seemed very different. How much was that your interventions, Wayjet's interventions? How did you shape it? Were you conscious about wanting to create a real and genuine dialogue?
One thing that is to note is that just because it seems the session were conducted in a very orderly manner, it doesn't mean that it's in any way purely scripted or presentation, just a presentation. There were pure heartfelt disagreements on the screen itself and as well as behind the scenes among the YBs, but it's very wholesome to see them supporting and congratulating each other. The thing about creating a dialogue is very important because it's a reminder that at the end of the day, we're working towards a better Malaysia as opposed to highlighting just these individuals.
Right. Well, you talked a little bit about upholding the integrity of Dewan Rakyat, right, as the role of a speaker. I'm wondering, technical challenges aside, this being an online forum, what were some of the challenges that, you learned about someone in this role? I'm wondering whether you looked into it, explored whether or not a speaker can be balanced and fair.
One thing that is to note is that it may seem that a speaker has wide discretionary power, so that's the thing to note. That way, it might seem that everything is unfair if some get more airtime than the others. But at the end of the day, the focus is on the content itself and what the issues that are being highlighted. So I'm glad that the YBs are very professional and none of them acted up in terms of calling out whether this is fair or unfair. Because at the end of the day, it's more important that the usul is properly debated. And I'm glad that both of the usuls have been passed.
Right.
Ayman, do you think there was sufficient diversity in the assembly? Because it was not an assembly that was elected. It was a selected one. Do you think in terms of worldview, orientation, values, there was sufficient diversity?
It is definitely a win for the whole lapisan masyarakat because 30% of the members of parliament are women. So there's female representation there. And on the second day of the persidangan itself on the topic of education, 40% of the MPs who debated about the motion are from Sabah and Sarawak constituencies, and there were plans on OKU, there were mentions of mental health, domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual education are included as well.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot. That's a lot of topics that were covered during the Sunday session which you presided over. I'm just wondering, Ayman, now that the event's over, I can ask you this: which ones were some of your favourites? Which ones were the ones that were memorable for you?
To set the context, the members of parliament only had 2 weeks to prepare, so keep in mind, they conducted consultations, they backed up all their arguments with data and facts, and the thing that I like about it is that it's not just the fact that they have facts to support their arguments, but they kept it engaging, they read out pantun, they dressed up in their traditional clothing, like the ones, the members from Sabah and Sarawak. They even changed their background picture to their city, and see how proud they are. Some of my personal favorite quotes would be, education is not a luxury, it's a basic human right. From Puncak Borneo, and the future belongs to those who can be online and offline from Bintulu.
Wonderful.
Ayman, where would you like this conversation to go? After this, what next for you?
For me, well, I will continue to support youth empowerment because if anything, Parlimen Digital have proven that it's not about prepping the youth for tomorrow anymore. The youth are ready and they will rise to the occasion if only they were given the opportunity. So I hope to see an increase in the number of youth participation in the legislating process. So seeing how recent developments of the certain ministries, how it echoes the ideas of like Farid Bunsa's idea about training counsellors to handle trauma and depression, and also the idea about RTM showcasing educational videos to address those with internet problems and online classes. Their ideas are practical and feasible, so it is time for the youth to participate.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Ayman, for speaking with us tonight. Really appreciate your time and sharing your experiences with us. Once again, congratulations to all the organisers of Parlimen Digital. That's all the time we have for this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night.